Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Quality, the podcast. My name is Hemish, and since 2023, I've been interviewing some of the most talented and well-respected quality leaders in the pharma and biotech industry to learn how they got to where they are now. This season is all about our guests and their journeys. Why they got into science, how they got into quality, their biggest challenges and greatest learns, and the highs and lows along the way. Every week, I'll be bringing you a new guest with the purpose of inspiring the next generation of quality leaders. Welcome to Season 3. I hope you enjoy the show. Hi all, welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Quality, the podcast. Today I'm joined by Karin von Hodenberg. Karin is the VP of Quality at a company called Monte Rosa Therapeutics. Karin started her life science journey in medical devices. She then moved into biotech, joining Bluebird Bio at a really early stage in their development. So had a really great grounding and learning process of building systems in a startup biotech. She's since then had a few different roles where she's built systems and processes from the offset. So for anyone that is really immersed in the early stages of building a quality team and really wants to learn how to instill a quality culture from an early stage, instill great processes and practices, this is a great episode to listen to. So let's get into it. Morning, Karin. Welcome to Let's Talk Quality.
Thank you. Thanks. Glad to be here.
Happy to have you on. Well, Karin, I've given you a very brief introduction, but if you could give everyone a really quick overview of who you are and what you are doing right now.
Absolutely. I'll walk a little bit backwards. So I'm currently the VP of Quality at Monte Rosa Therapeutics. We work with molecular glue degraders, and I've been in biotech for probably a good dozen years or so. So I'll try not to get down to specifics on that one. But yeah, I've been in biotech for a while. Prior to that, I was in med device, or I should say I started my career in med device. So I've kind of run the gamut a little bit between small molecules and gene therapy and medical device. Quality has never been my focus of my career until I got into it, and of course absolutely love it, otherwise I wouldn't be here. But yeah, so looking forward to chatting with you and getting to know things better.
Good stuff. So let's take it back to the beginning then. So how did your career in science, life sciences start? How did you get into it?
So I'm going to shock your audience because I don't have a science background at all. It actually started with business. So both undergraduate and graduate degree was in business. And then I got into order management and supply chain. And that's how the career got started, let's say. And where it morphed over into quality was at one point, I was within GE Healthcare at the time, and we were doing acquisitions all over the place. And I was a part of a lot of these acquisitions, again, from like an order management supply chain point of view. And I kind of took stock then after probably a good 5 years-ish or so and said, okay, you know, what do I really want to get into? Where's my skill set? Where are my strengths? And I recognized that I was lacking in the area of kind of data analysis. So I went back to the US on that one and joined the Six Sigma, became a Lean Six Sigma black belt. And that's where we focused over into quality. So I had one project that was in the global parts area, and then my following project was tied into the quality systems, and that's really what launched it. So from there, I think I really enjoyed it because there's regulations. You have the nice boundaries, so I do like everything in its nice little box. So you have the regulations to follow, and then I think what I also liked about it is that there's flexibility to figure out how do you make that work for you, and how do you have options. So how do you make that work to be able to be compliant with these regulations based on your business model? And that kind of took off from there. So,
and you're based in Massachusetts right now?
Correct. Yeah.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Wisconsin.
Okay.
So GE Healthcare was based in Waukesha at the time. So that was really the start. I think I was with GE for probably a good 10 years-ish or so. And then moved over to the dark side, moved over to one of our competitors, to Philips Healthcare, and that's what took me out to the East Coast. And then from Philips Healthcare as well, there was the quality role for sure. So it was getting into quality management systems, so really kind of foundational quality, so to speak. And then from there was also just kind of taking on when new roles came up or when new situations arose. I jumped in and just wanted to keep learning, and so that's what kind of led me to this current role where I've kind of the breadth across GXP, so to speak.
Yeah. And why was it that you thought you lacked in data analysis way back then.
I was very process focused, so
Yeah.
definitely following a methodology. So kind of logically that moves into Six Sigma. But I think the piece of, you get a bunch of data. How do you not just filter it, but how do you really get what you need out of it? What's the analysis there so that you're truly getting to, let's say, whether it's root cause or truly identifying what the data is telling you. And that's the piece that I felt, certainly I could look through an Excel file, but I felt that was an area that I needed to get better at, and not just reading an Excel file, but truly putting together data that was meaningful, that was
Mm.
accurate, reliable,
Yeah.
and that wasn't manipulated, so to speak, right? So
Yeah.
what is the data telling us as opposed to what would I really like to see out of the data? And that's where Six Sigma was amazing for me. And
Mm.
then I think even as I started to branch into the quality projects or the Lean Six Sigma quality projects, there was a lot of experience in terms of how do you how do you get to the right approach? How do you get to what you're looking for? I think one of our key projects was, okay, hopefully I don't say this too much out loud, but how do we trim down our product return or even our product recall process?
Mm.
It was well over 2 years to begin with. And we were given just a random, one of those of, need to get it down to 180 days.
Yeah.
So we did value stream mapping, and we, looked at the data, and we followed up with the customers, and we followed up with the sites, and we followed up with the distribution, et cetera. So a huge project, cross-functional, global, truly amazing. And we never did quite hit 180 days, but we did get down from the 700 and whatever down to I think it was 204 is the number I
Mm.
remember.
Yeah.
Just being able to recognize then too, how can we as quality add value back to the business? Because I think there is also a feeling out there that quality is always the roadblock, right? Like you're always
Mm.
coming up with processes, you're always, making us do X. And I think what I appreciated with that project and that role then was the ability to come back and say, hey, listen, we can totally do this. We can totally be more efficient.
Yeah.
We can totally get this right, but let's get it right from the beginning. So how do you take out the rework? How do you take out the cleanup? How do you do it right the first time? There's a
Yeah.
ton of overlap there that really became very meaningful back to the business.
Yeah. So it sounds like you were learning a lot about sort of quality culture and how to embed
Absolutely.
those
Absolutely.
processes and practices in. And this was at Philips
This one was at
or
GE
GE?
Healthcare.
GE.
Yep.
Fine. So okay. So you moved from GE to Philips to the other
Yep.
side to one of the competitors, and
Yep.
then when did you transition into biologic or pharma and biotech?
Sure. So that was with Bluebird Bio, and
Okay.
that I
Yeah.
totally don't even remember the year off the top of my head. And I was there
Yeah.
for probably a good 4 to 5 years.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot going on there at the moment, but at the time too, I think what I loved about joining Bluebird is we were maybe 300, 400 people at the time, so still relatively small.
Yeah.
And so we were crafting a quality system from ground up.
Hmm.
We
Yeah.
still had paper, so that was fun. So my role was, how do we make this more efficient? So how do we get this into electronic systems? How do we
Yeah.
validate those systems? How are we setting up our quality system again then as well, so that we can make sure that GMP, GCP, GVP, GDP, et cetera, can really springboard from there. So really making sure that everybody has, I wouldn't say a concrete foundation because there's got to be some sway there, but making sure that there's a solid foundation for those areas to be able to build up off of.
Yeah. Yeah. So
And culture wise too was phenom.
yeah.
And everybody wanted to do the right thing. They just were looking for guidance on what does that mean. The education there, the knowledge sharing, very fast paced, very smart people. It was a pleasure to be there at the
Yeah.
time then as
I
well. It
bet.
was really a lot of fun.
So which year was that?
Oh
Then
my
when you
gosh.
joined Bluebird?
Yeah, now that I'd have to look back into I want to say like 2016 to
Yeah.
2020 sounds about
Yeah.
right.
About the time where that sort of Boston Cambridge biotech
Yes.
hub was really booming and all getting going.
Yes,
And what
absolutely.
what an amazing time to join Bluebird as well. Was that where you worked with Greg?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, very good. So you grew up with some great people around you, great quality
Absolutely.
leaders around
Absolutely.
you, and you were building. And it was what, that sort of early phase preclinical or early
I think
phase
we were in
clinical
phase
development.
one. It was
Yeah.
definitely, we were in the clinic at that point. So
Okay.
we had a couple products that were in the clinic, and then we were trying to figure out how do we shift into phase three
Yeah.
/ inspection readiness,
Yeah.
inspection
Yeah.
preparedness, all that great stuff.
Yeah.
And then even just because it became global as well, like how do we get that distribution out? We wanted to manage and own our product, of course. So what does that look like from a distribution perspective? Where are the patients?
Yeah.
How do we reach them? And then what is the best, so again, back to supply chain. So pulling on, old threads there. What's the best way to be able to get that product to market? And how do we make sure that we're doing that compliantly and that we've
Yeah.
got the right framework in place?
Yeah. Yeah. So when you joined Bluebird, you phase one, let's say, and it was a paper-based quality system.
Oh yeah.
What were some of the, I guess, symptoms and triggers that meant that you needed to upgrade into an electronic, more robust system?
I think, well, one, just being able to outgrow the dot control room. So I'm glad we had a dot control room, but yeah, definitely we were full to the rafters there. And then I think even just the ease or ability to get access and get to those files
Hmm.
was just kind of key. Like, hey, this is recognizing this is not sustainable. If we're growing at the pace that we were, which was
Yeah.
also crazy growth, and seeing the number of employees that were coming on board and just the number of countries that we were heading into, we
Hmm.
absolutely needed to get those documents available in a system that was
Yeah.
validated and that was secure and that had the right levels of access. So we definitely started that way and started with Viva, and that kind of
Okay.
grew as well and became really a great system for us to be able to adopt as we could grow. So it was
Yeah.
definitely the right move.
Yeah.
Now,
I mean,
getting it into that system was another story. That whole migration effort was also a lot of
yeah.
fun there too.
Yeah, I bet. And it's also expensive
Oh yeah.
for us to start up. I speak to a lot of quality leaders who are in that real preclinical, pre-IND early phase, maybe just going into the clinic, but are operating with paper-based systems. And generally, like, that's okay at that sort of stage, but when you are pre-IND. But is there a particular sort of time in terms of as if stepping back, do you have any sort of measures or trigger points where you think, right, this is now the time to evolve our systems that we're using?
Well, with the quality hat on, I'd say as early as possible.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that I've recognized from my current company here at Monte Rosa is we don't have a dock control room and we don't need one
Hmm.
necessarily because we've done a really nice job about having all of these systems in place up front. Now, granted, it started off with non-validated, like Ignite folders, so to speak, but now we've got a DMS, we've got an LMS, we've got a LIMS system, and we are still early. But that has made a huge difference, not just again for people to be able to get their job done and get their work done, but knowing that all these documents are in a validated system and setting
Yeah.
up that organization of those systems up front before you get this onslaught of huge volume of documents that do need to get stored and loaded or revised, etc.
Yeah.
I think making sure that this is done up front is the best lesson I've learned from the last couple companies.
Yeah. Well, it must have been such a great, learning ground going into that environment. What were there? You mentioned one there, but were there any things where you look back at that time at Bluebird that you think, wow, this was an incredible learning ground, and these are some of the 3 or 4 things that, like, I wouldn't have learned had I not had that time at Bluebird?
Yeah, I think so. A lot of that again goes around to just being able to put a quality system in place.
Hmm.
And I think what I appreciated is that I was allowed or I had the ability to be able to take it soup to nuts. So under Greg's leadership, again, we were really able to make sure that we could make this happen. So we were very thoughtful about, one, where's the money going, like Viva, knowing full well that that was definitely a hefty price tag, but
Hmm.
also knowing that the cleanup efforts or the continuing with just the paper records was never going to be able
Yeah.
to allow us to get to where we needed to get to. And so that experience of getting that new system into place was huge. And then of the lovely part of migrating those records. So how do we verify all these lovely training records? And even by that point, with like what I said, 300 people, 350-ish, going over the last, I think it was probably like the last 3 or 4 years of training records, verifying all the different courses, making sure that we had all that data captured, that we had it captured correctly. And I think, again, you learn a little bit from your mistakes. I was really hoping that we could just do, like, let's say a sample, a verification set until we got through it and recognized that there were errors still. So we went back
Yeah.
and did 100% verification. But at least that way, now I know that the data that's coming into the new system is 100% clean and accurate, or at least
Yeah.
verified. So yeah, that was a big lesson there. The validation itself was a huge lesson. I know there were a couple of really late nights where we had our poor testers in until the wee hours of the morning just to be able to get it done. So
Yeah.
I think the camaraderie that sparked was great, but not that I'd want to do that to anybody in order to force camaraderie.
Yeah.
But it was definitely a lesson learned there as well.
Yeah.
But also resulted in a very successful system launch. So
Yeah.
happy with that
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, absolutely. So in that sort of experience, you obviously, went from a small, relatively startup environment into a bigger organization. You spent four years at Bluebird, around
About 4 years
three and a
in
half, 4 years.
Bluebird,
Yeah.
and then moved over to Akebia Therapeutics.
Yeah.
And then that was maybe a couple of years, and then moved over to Forma Therapeutics, which then was acquired by Novo Nordisk, and then
Yeah.
moved now over into Monte Rosa. And I've been with
Okay.
Monte Rosa for a couple of years now.
Yeah. So
So
you
now
really
just
sort of
starting to
immersed.
see the outcome. Yeah, now just starting to see the outcome of some of those initial decisions a couple of years ago, which is great.
Yeah, so you've obviously, you've done the big pharma, the big organization, G, Lips, Bluebird eventually, and now since then it's very much been that early startup building systems
Yes,
type of role. Do you enjoy that?
I love it.
That sort of
I love
scene,
it.
yeah,
Yeah, I love it
yeah,
because I think everybody is very open to it at that point too. So you've got a lot
yeah,
of people that are crazy for just getting some great information and some guidance on what does good look like, as
mm,
well as now we're building it from scratch. So instead of
yeah,
inheriting a system and trying to figure out what those glitches or bugs are, granted, there's still going to be bugs and glitches, but
yeah,
this way we've learned a lot from past experience, and we're trying to put that into action so we can prevent some of those issues from happening going forward.
yeah.
And I feel like that's really been successful here at Monte Rosa then too. So we've done a great job putting that in place.
Let's talk about just a bit about building quality culture, and it's a sort of a phrase that is often used, but a lot of people might not necessarily know how do you define a good culture of quality. What does it mean to you, and how do you go about building culture into your
You bet.
quality processes?
I think it starts with not just quality. So certainly you need a quality team that's thinking on the same level and everybody's headed in the right direction, but it's the business, it's the organization. So knowledge, it starts with knowledge, right? So how do you get that out? How do you make quality sexy? That's a fun job, right? But that's up to us, and I think I'll happily take on that challenge too. So joining in people's meetings, joining in town halls, making sure that we get some space or some time with the executive team as well. So
Mm,
making sure that they really understand too, what does it mean to have that quality mindset, and not just the mindset, but proving to them that there's value from the quality function, and that it's not just, hey, we're here to put procedures in place and processes in place. It's
mm,
here, we're here to protect the business. Very similar to the legal team from a compliance view, quality is here to make sure that the company is working compliantly with the regs, and that we're keeping our patients safe, that we're keeping our products safe, and that we're doing things the right way, so that we can enjoy that smooth pace forward, that smooth path towards approval. Again, usually not without its own hiccups, but trying to make that path as smooth as possible so that we can get approval and get that product to patients. But I
yeah,
think what they need to understand along the way too are what does good look like, and that's where hopefully the quality team is also leading by example, getting down to true root cause, making sure that we're making rational, phase appropriate, risk based decisions based on science and data. Three key points there. And
yeah,
then I think the other part to that too is just making sure that people understand where there is some flexibility in the process, and understand when quality comes back and says, no, we can't do that. Like, that's not compliant and that's a risk. So, nope, this is what we're going to do going forward. And there's a balance there, right? It's a bit of a
yeah,
tightrope at times. But I think a lot of that goes back to the education too. So not just saying no, but this is why we can't do it that way. But
yeah,
here's some of our other options. So let's pursue these.
yeah. How much time do you spend talking and working with other functional heads
Oh my
across the
gosh.
business? Because especially in a startup environment where you might be the only person in quality, you might have one or two others, or so. Like,
Yeah.
what is a typical in a startup and world? What does a typical amount of time look like when working with your other leaders across the business?
I think at the beginning, it's definitely more time is spent just trying to connect and understand what are some of the challenges that these other cross functional leaders are going through, and where
Mm,
does quality fit in? How can we help, instead of just being a decision maker? Yes, no, you can do this, you can do that. How do we help? How
yeah,
do we actually support? How do we get involved? And so, yes, at the beginning, I think there's a lot of time. And then I think slowly, as the teams again kind of increase their knowledge of what good looks like or what correct is,
Mm.
then certainly there's a little bit more of a, hey, Karen, I've got this issue, or this is what this we need some help on this side, or hey, I've taken a look at this deviation, but I think we've got an issue with this particular part of it, or lab investigation, or
Yeah.
whatever the issue might be. So I think even just being able to develop that relationship so much so that people do come to you with issues and know that you're there to help and provide a solution, as opposed to just be like, no, you got to do this, or whatever the other
Yeah.
case. I think
Yeah.
that's important. And especially I think at Monte Rosa now too, I'll say I've got one-on-ones with each of the other EXP functional heads.
Okay.
Pretty much every 2 weeks we meet, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's, hey, I don't have anything for you this week, and other times it's like, okay, I think we've, let's take a big picture step at this and be like, all right, this is what I see coming up in the future. What does that look like, and
Mm.
how do you think we're going to address this?
And what about senior leadership? The I guess
ELT
the
level.
board and the yeah,
Yeah.
exactly
Yeah.
the people that are sort of managing the functional heads, like how much
Well, luckily,
visibility and access
I
do
have
you
a
have?
great boss who's on the ELT. So Phil Nixon,
Yeah.
he's Chief Legal and Business Officer,
Okay.
and he's great about getting me in front of the ELT then too. So
Yeah.
certainly, I think the first time I said, yeah, I think the ELT really needs to have an annual GXP training, just
Mm.
to kind of get aligned and grounded, and that includes everybody, not just the GXP C-suite. He was like, okay, great, let's do it. And I'm sure most of the ELTs probably rolled their eyes a little bit, but here we go. It's quality again coming in, trying
Do you
to
think?
tell us what needs to happen. I
Yeah.
think pieces of it, yes.
Yeah.
Maybe not everybody, but pieces of it, yes.
Yeah.
Until we got in there, and I think the first statement I said was, what is good look? Why do we do this? We do this to keep our products and patients safe. We do this because it's just common sense, good business practice, and that doesn't mean from a monetary standpoint. It means we're doing things the right way. We're addressing issues when they come up
Yeah.
and addressing them down to root cause. And of course, it's a regulatory requirement. And I
Yeah.
said, what happens if we don't do this? Well, if we know about it, the worst case scenario is that both the CEO and myself go to jail. And I think that was a bit of a stunner. Of course, that's worst case scenario, right? Like that certainly doesn't happen every day.
Yeah.
I don't look that good in orange, so I really don't want to go that direction. But that's how important this is, and that's
Yeah.
why we need to make sure that we're doing things the right way, and that's why we need ELT support at the top level down to make sure that
Mm.
everybody understands what this purpose is.
It's quite a difficult transition for because for example I've got a mentorship program where senior leaders, VPs, SVPs are mentoring aspiring VPs, guys that are typically at AD director level, and the biggest challenge for them is making that leap to go from that director level when you're in the weeds and doing tactical stuff to
Yeah.
the bigger job and communicating with C-suite and ELTs. It's not an easy transition, which you have to kind of learn on the job, I'm guessing. But what are some of the things that you did to enable you or to improve your development in that space?
Sure. I think it does. It sounds rather simple and it sounds kind of time consuming, but I think even having the one-on-ones, and I don't mean even a one-on-one within the office. I mean, go grab coffee with someone from that function, or
Mm.
say, hey, I'd love to get 30 minutes of your time and just cover what are some of the issues. Be a listener and really understand what are some of the issues that they have and how can you step in to address that. So using a lot of those influencing skills then for certain from an AD or director level, and being able to have those discussions and build those relationships so
Yeah.
that you're not just someone. Typically, I think there's a tendency to kind of make a lot of asks. Hey, I need this from you. I need this from you. But being able to say, hey, no, I'm a partner here and this is
Mm.
what I want to do. I want us to come up with a solution. How can I help? What can we do? And how can we solve some of these issues or some of these pain points for you and set us on the right path? And then,
Yeah.
and I think there's a lot to be said there too from understanding and gaining some credibility too to follow through on some of those asks of the quality team, to be able to make sure that you're truly delivering what you say you're going to do and not just making it, talk.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned influencing there, and that's a very part. And a lot of these are softer skills that have to either be worked on, developed, or you may not have them in the first place. What are some of the other skills, do you think, from a softer perspective that people should be trying to develop?
I think the biggest skill set that I'm looking for in candidates, either whether they're coming into quality or whether I'm interviewing for other teams as well, is critical thinking.
Okay.
So don't even just look for, hey, it's never just black and white. If it was, you would need far fewer quality people.
Yeah.
So yes, I said that out loud. But there's so much gray, and there's like I said, there's many different ways to be able to get to the end result. So what is your business practice? What is your business model and your business phase? There's what's the risk level? There's a variety of different factors there. So how do you take that and factor in then what do you need to be able to get the job done? And how can you come in and approach that? What take a look at something and really think critically, like I don't want to fix this just at the surface level. We need to fix this all the way down or
Mm.
anticipate, okay, we might have some short term actions here, but I think in the long term, this is where we need to get to. And here's the roadmap of how we do that. I think that thinking ahead a little bit too is 80% planning, 20% execution, right? So
Yeah.
that's, I think, also very key, especially for quality folks in terms of trying to understand where's the business trying to get to and how do we need to adapt, just evolve to be able to match that business plan.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's interesting. And do you have any when it comes to say sort of if you're interviewing someone and really looking for that critical thinking ability, do you have any systems, scorecards, tangible questions that you ask in that process to really score someone on critical thinking
Yeah, usually the
process
question
wise?
I'll ask is give me an example of a time when you had a challenging problem or a challenging issue. How did you address it and how did it work? And then
Yeah.
I'll also kind of follow that up with is there a time too when you failed epically? What did that look like and what lessons did you learn from it? And then, of
Mm.
course, trying to soften things up. When was there a time where you see that there was a project that you had a roaring success and what were the success factors? And usually then you can start to
Mm.
tease out a little bit of what was their approach and how did they get there.
That's really interesting. How did you decide? Is that something that you've picked up throughout your career from other
I think
leaders?
so.
Yeah.
I can't remember, to be honest, if it might have even been a Google search to begin with, but
Yeah.
I think it's definitely something that I've seen has been kind of a telling story then through some of the interviews.
Yeah.
And I think it was important. I probably heard it a little bit myself too then, like especially during an interview, you always want to keep it positive. So when someone says, tell me when you failed, well, I'm too nice or, right, the
Yeah.
easy
Yeah.
answers. But
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
really hear somebody think about that and give you an honest response back of, this was an issue that or mistakes that were made and this is what we learned from it. Great. I'd love to hear that because
Yeah.
not only did you learn from it, but hopefully you're also going to be preventing that from happening somewhere
Yeah.
else again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, not the. Sometimes I work too hard.
Right, right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, fine. In that sort of startup world, especially in this environment in biotech, it's a tough climate. Data is really important, but obviously funding and cash runway is critical. It's a tough investment climate. There's so much uncertainty. When you're in a small organization and there is no certainty in any organization, any biotech, but how do you go about? Do you have a sort of a framework around creating a vision for your quality team so that you can attract people in and you can keep them engaged throughout the journey, throughout clinical development, when factors are outside of your control, like data and funding? How do you keep people on track and how do you go about communicating the vision and keeping people, aligned towards that vision that is aligned to the company vision? It's a big
You bet.
question, I know, but
No, that's
it'd be
okay.
really
I'm
interesting.
ready. I'm ready on that one. So again, I think it's probably just Karen's personality a little bit, but I do
Yeah.
set up a roadmap. So when I first started, even at Monte Rosa, at pretty much the last few companies, I've set up a kind of a 3-year plan. Now, granted, stuff moves around all the time, but
Hmm.
a 3-year plan as well as let me break down the next year into quarters. Like this is what we're going to achieve. Whether it's system related, like hey, we've got a DMS or a doc management system implementation that's going to be scheduling in for next year. So what do we need to do to back into that? How do we make sure that that's going to be working effectively? And then also quality culture needs to be part of that roadmap then as well. Now we're a team of 2 at the moment at Monte Rosa. So even Megan on my team, she's presenting in town halls. So she's getting her voice out there. She's getting visibility for us then as well, so that we can kind of share with the rest of the organization too. This is what our plan is. This is what we're
Hmm.
looking to achieve, knowing that there's a strategic overarching plan too, and this is how we fit into it. Now,
Nice.
like I
Yeah.
said, at that 3-year plan, usually that third year, there's always like a under construction sign on that one, because thinking
Yeah.
even 3 years out is usually a challenge. But to at
Yeah.
least get a 2-year plan out there and then shift it as needed. Like there's stuff that does need to change. There's stuff that gets pulled in. There's stuff that gets pushed out. Fine, but
Yeah.
you've got kind of a roadmap to go off of. And I think then just to kind of answer your second part of the question, which is when it's a challenging environment then as well, like a funding, et cetera, I think that transparency is key. I feel bad for the companies where it keeps staying hidden until you find out at the last moment. I think people need to understand, here's the challenge we're in. This is what's going on. This is how we're addressing it. Let us, I may not have the answers, but we want to be transparent with you. We want you to know what's happening.
Yeah.
And I think that's important too.
Yeah, I definitely. And sometimes there can't be that clarity in the path ahead. Like you say, the 3-year
Yeah.
roadmap is a bit under construction. So, and it's communicating and being transparent around that uncertainty and ambiguity. So yeah, no, that makes sense. And I like what you're doing. You mentioned with Megan as well, like getting her involved with town halls. That's really developing her as well.
Absolutely.
To take on, when, hopefully when the time comes to grow and scale.
Absolutely.
So you're already developing her in that sense, but she's probably getting a lot of satisfaction internally and developing herself. So,
I hope so.
Yeah, no, it sounds great. So looking ahead then, what are you, in your current role, I suppose, what are you excited about? What are the challenges? How are you, how's that sort of vision panning out?
So there's a lot going on. So, which is also really good news and also mildly terrifying at times. So definitely, we're in the clinic with a couple of products, and we're aiming to move into new phases then as well, which is great. So great news. So what does that look like for us? Not just the day-to-day operational quality, but now we're starting to get into true inspection readiness. So getting baselines of, where are our various quality elements, where are we at? And that includes ourselves within quality. Certainly we have our own items to take care of. So starting off with, I'd say, the inspection readiness, and now we're starting to kick that off then too, which again goes back to first things first is education. This is what we expect. Do we have a timeline on that? Not necessarily, but this is what to expect during an inspection, and this is where we need to get to. And I think the biggest part with that is also making sure that people recognize that inspection readiness is not just for an inspection. We need to be inspection ready at all times. And what does that look like? So how do we make sure that we're documenting our full study, documenting the manufacturing campaigns? How do you make sure that we've got all of our documents in the safe spot, that we know where to go to get them, that we're following up with our vendors, that we've got all the vendor oversight, et cetera? What does all of that look like? And how do we make sure that we're, again, phase appropriate, but that we're kind of level loading what that workload looks like across the next few years as we start to move into these new phases then as well. So yeah, definitely a lot going on. It's crazy exciting. So really good news, but it's also that the timelines are tight. So how do we make sure that we're fitting into the business timelines there as well? And also making sure that it's the same group of people that need to be working on reviewing documents, working with vendors, bringing new vendors on board, and OPS, by the way, also setting up inspection readiness for their own particular areas. So how do we help make sure that we are not a roadblock, but that we're part of that work plan?
Yeah. So challenges wise, it's about sort of meeting timelines, meeting the expectations of the internal of the business.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
To make sure you're prepared for the next stages.
Yeah, and being a part of the discussions for their plans too. So recognizing that, hey, if we're looking forward, what do we need from quality based on what those plans are, so that we can make sure that we're part of the timing and not just reactive to it.
Yeah, very good. Well, it sounds it's exciting. It's great to hear positivity in this market as well, which is awesome. So looking ahead then, and I want to talk a bit about I suppose the future of where the industry is heading and how tools like AI and digital technologies are being adopted. Have you started seeing a change in the way that quality, specifically quality, I suppose, is performed with the acceleration of things like AI?
I haven't seen much yet. So to be honest, I think we're still just trying to figure it out. But I do think that we need to absolutely be open to it and really understand how can we have that work for us.
Yeah.
So certainly if the FDA I know is looking at using AI as part of reviewing submissions, et cetera. Now, granted, there's nothing solid that's coming back out yet, but aside from a lot of really good discussion around how can this work and how may it not work. I know
Yeah.
in one case for ourselves, thinking we're probably still a little bit more conservative from that view. And what we're taking a look at is even for like some of the documented quality meetings, can we have AI just take notes for those meetings and can we use those notes for minutes? And I think the answer could potentially be yes, potentially, as long as there's somebody else that's going back and just verifying that it's correct and signing off on it. So yes, how can we use these tools? So long as we also know that they're accurate and complete, right? And then there's some kind of a human verification at the end that confirms that yes, this person, QC'd the minutes and confirmed that everything was correct. That's on the conservative side, right? So I think we do still need to be taking a look at how can this work for us and what other areas can we apply it to that will be beneficial for us then as well. So definitely I think we need to be open to it. It's definitely the way that we're headed in the future, but I don't think that we've got a solid view yet on how we do that. So I think there's still some work that we need to do on that front.
Very good. Karin, really enjoyed this conversation. I usually end with some quick fire questions.
You bet.
So my first question is, who's been the biggest inspiration to you in your life? And that can be either personally or professionally.
I think it's mainly professionally. But I can't say there's just one. Greg Whitehead definitely was a great leader. Phil Nixon, now my current boss, has been a great leader. Lynn Birch from GE Healthcare, so a few ages ago. Sorry, Lynn. She was a fantastic motivator. She was a great mentor for me as well. And I've had a lot of other great mentors along the way also, even from undergrad and graduate school too. So I think I got lucky or have been lucky that there have been so many people that have helped kind of mold me or support me. Some folks that I can really fall back on and that help give me the right guidance to get me to where I am and who I still certainly reach out to today.
Yeah, awesome. What's the one value that guides how you behave as a leader?
Well, behave as a leader, that's an easier one. One value, I don't know if I can pick just one, but behave as a leader, it's leading by example. Stand by your word. My word is my bond. And when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. So if I'm going to set a good quality example, I want folks to take note of that. And granted, I'm going to probably stumble somewhere along the way, but I'm going to do my best to lead the way I want to see other leaders act and the way that I would love to see my team act as well. So leading by example for sure.
Yeah, really good. Final question. What one piece of advice, if you had to single out one piece of advice to give to an aspiring quality leader, what would that be?
It would be recognize that you're going to make mistakes. I think within quality too, there's a tendency to be like, well, this is by the book, right? You've got a regulation. This has got to be easy. Mistakes get made. So learn from them and don't repeat them. So don't spend too much time on them. It's a mistake is a mistake. Own it, recognize it, and then move on from it. And just make sure that you've learned the lesson that was put into place there.
Awesome. Karin, that's been brilliant. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I think there's some really good, practical stuff that people can take away from that conversation who are going through that sort of early stage in their career or their leadership career and building systems in a whatever environment, but also from a leadership perspective, I think the way that you come across and the way that you're developing your people, I think is really aspirational for a lot of people. So really appreciate you being so honest with your, I suppose, your journey and sharing your feedback and sharing the ways that you've got around things in the past and look, wishing you all the best, Monte Rosa. It sounds like an exciting time.
It absolutely is, and
we'll have to have you.
Me.
Yeah, no, pleasure. We'll have to have you back on in another year and see how that three-year vision is mapping out.
Absolutely.
And hopefully on track. But no, thank you so much, Karin. It's been great.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you for listening to today's show. I hope that you got value from it, whether you're starting your career in quality or if you're at the top of your field. Today's episode was brought to you by RX Group. I'm the founder of RX Group. We are a pharma and biotech recruitment organization focusing purely on quality assurance. We recruit consultants and senior level permanent quality professionals into the pharma and biotech industry. If we can support you, whether that be in a hiring capacity or if you yourself are looking for work, please get in touch with me on LinkedIn, visit our LinkedIn page where you can subscribe to the podcast, and visit our website, www.rx-group.io, to find out more about us. See you soon.